Welcome to Invisible Machines, a podcast where we explore the expanding world of AI agents and conversational technologies. I'm Josh Tyson, co-author of Age of Invisible Machines, a best-selling book all about the agentic approach to automation and the pursuit of organizational AGI. I'm joined each week by Rob Wilson, CEO and co-founder of OneReach.ai. Rob and I wrote Age of Invisible Machines over the course of numerous conversations, much like the ones we have each week on this podcast. Rob has spent decades researching and deploying conversational technologies, and Invisible Machines is where we share big ideas with fellow AI insiders. We are continuing these conversations in partnership with UX Magazine because attention to experience design is absolutely critical to the proper deployment of AI agents, or as we call them, invisible machines. Today, we're bringing you a timely discussion with author and sought-after speaker Marc Prensky, who is widely known for coining the terms digital native and digital immigrant, both of which are now in the Oxford English Dictionary. This is a conversation between Marc and myself, though we touch on a lot of the topics Rob and I frequently explore here on Invisible Machines. Marc has some bold ideas about how we might address the shortcomings of our current education system and how powerful new tools might inspire and enable young people to design their own futures. We also talk about the challenges that companies face in adjusting to this new technology paradigm, as well as the good and the harm it might bring about for society as a whole. Marc is a self-professed optimist, and his new book, Third Millennium Kids, explores how AI is poised to change a whole generation's understanding, productivity, and purpose. In this episode, Marc and I debate the role that smartphones play in classrooms and agree that the world needs more love, empathy, gratitude, and optimism. This conversation also ties into the episode we have coming out next week with Jun Kir, the professor of Korean linguistics at Oxford. Jun has been writing extensively about AI natives, this emergent group of people who have just started eating solid food, but who will grow up having only known a world filled with intelligent speaking machines. Stay tuned for that conversation, and right now enjoy this one with Marc Prensky. Invisible Machines is produced for UX Magazine in partnership with OneReach.ai. Named a leader by every major analyst group, OneReach.ai's Generative Studio X platform was built specifically to facilitate the no-code orchestration of AI agents. GSX is trusted by global giants like PepsiCo, PwC, Deloitte, and DHL, but anyone can experience the level of agent orchestration we talk about on this podcast through interactive demos at OneReach.ai. Now, on with the show. So Marc, my parents were both elementary school teachers, and as I was reading your description of digital natives, I was struck by a point that you made that we're educating young people whose brains might have actually formed differently from the brains of, say, digital immigrants.
Absolutely. It's hard because we don't know all about their brains really, because we have no baseline. We really can't tell that. But certainly their experiences and their life experiences are so different. And now that we're in such a changing generation and a changing time, what they are all about and their experiences have nothing to do with what we used to teach them in the 20th century. We have this curriculum, I call it the mess: math, English, science, social studies. And we sit the kids down in front of it and they all go, why? And they look at their phones, which now we're starting to ban, which is horrible. And because they'd much rather be on those phones than be listening to this stuff that's coming out of their teachers' mouths. So, and yet we want to have well-prepared people. We want to bring up our kids well, and we just don't know how to do it for the future. And that's really what my book, Third Millennium Kids, is about. It's about what we have to do differently and how we have to look at young people differently in order to prepare them for a very different world in the third millennium.
Yeah, I feel like I'm of a mixed mind about cell phones in the classroom. I guess because my dad, he would get in trouble a lot when he was teaching. Like the administrators didn't like him because he wouldn't follow the lesson plans really, and he would just read to the kids as much as he could. I feel like you can learn a lot from that, but it's hard to captivate a room of kids with live oration if they have phones. But on the other hand, I can see how there are a lot of things that kids can learn faster in those mediums that they're so used to learning from.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot more than that, because first of all, it's the what. And there's no question that if what you were trying to do is the old-fashioned way of tell test, teaching a standard curriculum, which most teachers think of as their job today, they're told that that's their job, then yeah, having all your kids, doom scrolling in front of you is a distraction. But if that's what school is, all that tell test stuff is absolutely ridiculous. And learning in advance, I'm sorry, my phone keeps beeping. But but if that's the experience of school, that is such an outdated experience. And the stuff that's in the curriculum is so useless for almost everybody, except in very specific instances, that they know that it's worthless for them to be there. And the only way I got my kid, who just graduated from high school, out, as I said, play school, because it's going to be important for the next few years that you have played school. But they don't want to do that, and there's no reason why they should. And then the next thing is phones in the classroom. Yeah, there should be phones in the classroom. Unbelievably, there should be phones. The kids are going to live their lives on phones or with technology or whatever it is. And if they don't do it now, they're not going to be prepared. But it has to be for doing different things. So if I went into a classroom, what I would say is, okay, you all have these supercomputers in your pocket. What can we do with them? How can we learn this? Okay, you're interested in Palestine, somebody? Let's talk to kids in Palestine. You're interested in space? Let's go to space. Let's look at Hubble, through the Webb telescope. And it needs to start not with a curriculum that we've determined in advance. That was useful in the past. We needs to start with who each kid is, what they're interested in. And the motto of my book is hell yes, low stress. Just start with where the kids are, what they care about, and then we have all the tools today and tomorrow to take them wherever they enjoy going.
You talk about getting to know each kid, and that feels like where there's great strength in at least properly orchestrated kind of AI ecosystem is that you can provide really personalized experiences. And it feels like the only barriers to really getting that set up in a classroom are the ones that we've set up and that we're clinging to in a way. The typical way of teaching things is almost just like this memorization and then reciting things back, which is like one of the most useless skills you can have in a world where you can just ask a machine that knows everything. And so it seems like the traits that will really carry people forward might be kind of a mixture of creativity and just confidence, because you'll be surrounded by these tools that can really allow you to do almost anything if you're ready to kind of try it out and take the leap a little bit.
And I agree. And I think that for the moment, the trait that's most important is imagination. Because in order to prompt these things, you have to ask it a question. You have to ask it to do something. You have to imagine something. So I know somebody now who's making an opera about artificial love. And it all started out with his prompting the AI to do this and talk to him and think about this. And the more we have, an imagination for the moment is human. And the more that we have the imagination, the AI just takes it and augments it, and means we don't have to spend all those years building up technique. And that's what the artists in the past, to take a Leonardo or a Mozart or a Bach, they just spent all their time building up technique, or any pianist today or any composer. And now you don't need that. Now you can hum a tune and the AI will play it for you on the grandest of pianos or by a symphony orchestra or any of that kind of stuff. And so it's the imagination, which has always had problems coming out, is now greased, and it can just flow out. And it can do that for everybody. And that's what is exciting to me. And we should do that with our kids early, third grade, second grade, before school. And because they're doing that, they're writing books, right? If you say to a kid, what kind of book would you like to read? And then the kid says, well, I want to read a book about a duck alligator. And right, and well, that doesn't exist. Oh, well, let's make it exist, right? You put the kid on your knee, you said, okay, ChatGPT, let's talk about a book about a duck alligator. And it will show you the pictures, and it will do the thing, and it will create the story. And this, what an exciting thing for a young person.
Yeah, write the book you want to read, build the world you want to live in.
Exactly. And that's really coming to pass. And people are so scared of it. But the people who are native to it, who grow up natively with it, if they have the opportunity, they will figure this out. Humans are incredibly adaptive, and we will adapt to this new stuff. It's not going to ruin us. It's not going to take us anywhere where there are some things that are not good about it, like the greed that's involved in some of the apps that people are building. But as a tool, not even a tool, I think it's just a new human capability. I think we're in the middle of an evolution, and we've always had non-biological evolution ever since for the last 100,000 years. We've invented speech, we've invented tamed animals, we've invented agriculture and writing and print and many things like that, and social organization. Those are all evolutions. We were different people after those things happened. And so now the latest innovation is technology, and then connection of everybody in the world through the internet, and now AI. And that's just, we're now differently evolved people.
Yeah. How has the concept of digital natives changed in your mind since, I think it was like 2001 when you kind of revealed it? Has it fundamentally changed, or is it more like the accoutrements have kind of changed as technology has surged forward?
Well, it's gotten bigger. And it was originally technology, it was digital natives. And the original impetus for this was that I had a company full of young people. And when I had a problem, I would call my friends, the people I knew who had expertise. And when they had a problem, they would just post something online. And they'd usually get an answer faster and better than I did. And so I suddenly started thinking about how they're doing things differently. They're living in a different world where they have these capabilities that I didn't grow up with and that I'm not even fully comfortable with, but they are natively comfortable with. They're not afraid of it. It's for them the way you do it. And that is what led me into this concept of being native speakers of the digital language, which is what a digital native is. And then that extended to the concept of, well, those who come to that language later are immigrants, and they never will be quite as fluent as the people who grew up with it, even though they try their best and they get good sometimes. So, but then over time, so people started pointing out to me, and there was a lot of criticism when that first came out. The criticism was, well, no. A lot of the kids don't know anything about technology, and a lot of the adults know everything. And by the way, the adults are inventing the technology. And suddenly I realized, no, we're talking about a different culture. We're talking about different humans in a different culture. And Margaret Mead, for 50 years ago, she wrote that we're going through a change in which the young people and not the old people are going to determine what the culture is, because it's moving so fast. And that's really, in a sense, what's happening. And it's happening extremely, extremely quickly. I see AI as just a new part of us. I see it as an evolution of people. So now we used to be people without AI. I call it missing intelligence. We now have a form of intelligence that we were missing up till now. And the question is, what are we going to do with that? The reason why we can take lessons from the past so much is because we have not changed emotionally as people in 100,000 years. And so if we go back to Shakespeare, go back to Homer, if we do this, they have lessons about greed, about hubris, about all these things to teach us that we still have, because that's really a big piece of us still. But what's happening today is the intellectual side of us the creative side of us, all this is going through the roof. Suddenly, we're really becoming incredibly more powerful people in whether it's to create stuff or weapons or art or anything else. We are billions of times, or we're going to be billions and trillions of times more powerful. And I see that gap, and I call it the IE, the intellectual emotional gap, as really being a big problem in the future. And it's kind of like Mozart, right? The terrible person, horrible person who wrote heavenly music, right? That's really part of what we might be turning into, right? We can put out this incredible stuff. We can go to the moon. We can go to rockets. We can design the Webb telescope. We can design all these credible things. And yet we're still the same fighting, bickering, greedy, racist, abusive, belligerent, bullying people that we've always been. And so my perspective is, if we can't change that, I have two acronyms I use. I use LEGO, which is love, empathy, gratitude, optimism. And that's what we want more of. And it's not the toy company, but it's love, empathy, gratitude, optimism. Who doesn't want those? We don't have enough of them. But the opposite side, the flip side, is what I call grab. Greed, racism, abuse, belligerence, bullying, probably more you can add to that. And unless we can increase the Lego and decrease the grab in the world, we're going to be in trouble. But the good news is that we're now in a time where we can manipulate that stuff. Not by killing off the ones we don't like, which is what we did in the past, and that's why nobody likes that stuff. But we can do it the same way we do it for diseases. We can manipulate genes. We can figure out how to make people universally, and without harming them, we can figure out how to make humans better. And I'm very optimistic that we're going to do that in the third millennium.
What's I guess the risk I see there is that sounds expensive, and I worry that the kind of people or the companies, I guess, organizations that have the finances to build that type of technology, what would inspire them to build it altruistically, or to want to strip out the grab elements? Because there is kind of this strange compulsion, and maybe I think it's overemphasized perhaps in American culture, but just this insane competitiveness about everything, and to me that feels locked in with grab. But there are also, there's good and bad sides to that, I guess, too. Like, we watch great athletes or whatever, and we admire what they do, but like, it's some sort of really intense strain of competitive behavior that pushes them there and often alienates other people. So how do you think we will balance getting there?
It's tough. If you have grab without the Lego, if you don't have the love, empathy, gratitude, and optimism, and a lot of our businesses don't. A lot of them are run by grabby people, and and you just look at what goes on, and they're all after, let's make a profit. That's what's happening with the phones now. There's a lot of exploitation of young people. You can buy these in-game purchases. You can get gambling is probably the worst one. And there's lots of people who say, "Oh, this is great because we're making a fortune doing this kind of stuff." And so that's what I want. That's what I think we have to, as a society, decide we want to have less of. Now, if we don't decide that, then it won't go away. But just in the same ways we see benefits in eliminating disease, or in making lifespans longer, or in certain things that there's pretty much agreement that that's going to make us, better humans, and that we don't die at 25 anymore, and we don't, we have grandchildren, and we do a lot of things that they didn't have centuries ago. And so I think it's an up and down. There's a lot of variation, but we're basically on a curve that's trying to improve humans. That said, humans are just like this tiny blip in the universe. I mean, we love ourselves so much, and we think this is great, and why can't we get better? Why can't we do this? We're just we're less than a pimple, or a pimple on a pimple in the universe, And whether humanity continues or not is not going to be pretty much up to us. It's going to be up to whether something hits us or something does something, and so I'm not so concerned about that. But while we're here and like being here, we ought to do our best to be the best we can.
Yeah, not going to argue with that. We've been talking a lot lately on this podcast about conversational AI and AI. And so sort of this abstraction layer, especially when you look at a business, a really effective way to orchestrate AI agents is to have them operate software for you so that your employees don't have to go into these kind of old, outdated UIs to try and gather information and then pogo stick between apps and email and text and Slack and all these different channels. Eventually, they could all just be abstracted by a portal that you could speak to talk to an organization. But the interesting thing about that abstraction layer is, once software systems are abstracted, then it feels like greater systems start to get abstracted. And soon a lot of things start getting abstracted. And then there's all sorts of reasons why that could really affect what it even means to be a business, and why a business would succeed and why people would contribute to its success. So I wonder if somewhere in there might be an answer to how, what you were mentioning, how we can change the way businesses see themselves and kind of operate in the world.
Yeah, well, we're going to have to come back in 100 years. I was a musician who went to Harvard Business School, so I kind of saw both sides, and I did not come out being very optimistic about business. I came out thinking that business is basically about money and about greed and about not necessarily greed, because not everybody who makes money is greedy, but it's really about that. And if you think it's about anything else, you're really, I think, deluding yourself. But so a lot of things that the business does now, which has first of all, it performs functions that are very necessary. If you didn't have a business to collect garbage, if you didn't have a business to build things, if you didn't have a business to build clothing, we wouldn't have it. And it also does something else at the moment, which is make an economy. And so somehow through that process, it's like the water cycle, that money flows back to the individuals who can then spend it. And so there really is, that's the way our economy is set up. I don't think it's going to continue to be like that. I think that a lot of the stuff that we do today to have an economy will be automated and will more or less happen. And what people will do is either they will realize dreams they have, or they'll fix problems they see, because there'll always be that, or they'll help other people or other creatures like animals, whatever they want to do. And the way they will have a living is probably some form of UBI that we haven't totally figured out yet. Because another interesting theory is that because the technology is on this exponential curve, it is actually paying for itself in productivity. It is generating more productivity than we almost need, but we haven't found a good way to turn that productivity into money and spending yet.
Yeah, I think I similarly kind of hold a dim view of a lot of corporations, I think just because of that sort of ruinous greed component. But there are, like, when I think of some of the companies I see in the world that seem to be kind of doing it right, it's interesting to me that they're not like tech companies. I think of like Patagonia making, their ultimate shareholder of the earth. And I think of like Dr. Bronner's, the soap company. They're extremely transparent. And I think it's funny because I guess Bronner's in particular seems like a company that probably wants very little, if nothing, to do with AI. But when you think about maybe AI being introduced to a company that has that sort of one for all mindset, where it's like, we're doing this together. We're not doing this to get one person rich. We're doing it so we can all kind of have this shared experience and create a better world. Like, then you start to see how, if you bring that technology in and you're inspired to use it to make experiences better for your employees, that eventually trickles down to your customers, but maybe you're not as concerned about trying to maximize productivity, or like in Patagonia's case, like I don't imagine that they would use the technology to try and maximize production of fleece jackets. They're probably going to be looking more for ways that they can bring people closer together, eliminate waste, reduce shipping costs, like those kind of things.
Yeah, well, they're doing both, and everybody cites Patagonia because it's a rare example. But I just heard it cited earlier today, which is why I say that.
Interesting.
But the issue is bigger than what one company does. It's really how society is going to organize itself and what people are going to do. And in the past, the way it was organized was that you had to learn how to do something in advance. That's why you went to school, and then look for a job, which was really hard, and you'd probably get one that didn't particularly fit what you like to do, but it was made you money, and then you had a hobby on the side to do whatever you love to do. And that was kind of the way life worked in the 20th century. And I think that's going to change because people are not going to do anymore the kinds of things they don't like to do. And we're seeing that in a lot of places, and kids quitting and quiet quitting and all this kind of stuff. And they're not going to have to because the technology will take over. And so what we'll be able to do, and we need a whole different system than we have to do this. It's going to have to really evolve. We're going to have to, besides imagination, the other thing that I think is really needed for the future is high enthusiasm, low stress, a lot of self-knowledge, and going out and doing and accomplishing things from early ages. So that, AI can do a lot, but it's not out there cleaning the garbage yet for everybody. It's because India has AI, they're not going to have lower garbage piles for a while. I hope they will eventually. But so there's plenty of things for people to do if they like it, if they want to do it, if they're interested. Some of them may help other people, some of them may help fewer other people, but they do it with enthusiasm.
In conversations we've had on this podcast too, we even wonder, like, will there be companies? Like, what will people be doing? But I do agree that, like, if people are engaged and enjoying themselves and, like, not necessarily having to think of their life as work, but as a collection of experiences that they enjoy and that enrich them, and maybe they get to spend more time with families and with their friends and playing guitar and lute and vibraphone, that's not the worst outcome.
It's not a bad outcome at all. And yet there are these things like helping other people and fixing problems and realizing dreams that people are always going to want to do. We're not going to run out of problems to fix. We're not going to run out of dreams. We're not going to run out of those things. And businesses, it's interesting, there's another perspective, which is businesses are fragmenting from jobs to projects. And this is a big trend going on in business, where you don't get hired to do a job, where you're just the marketing manager and you market this stuff, or you're the QC manager and all you do is that over and over again. No, they're hired for projects, like a movie. So they pick you because you have some expertise and that you've developed because you really care about it and you love that stuff. And then they put you on a team and you do a project, and it succeeds or doesn't succeed. And somebody from IBM once told me, he said, we don't even do job descriptions anymore. We do project descriptions.
Sure.
So this is a real, another big trend that's coming in the world. And the nice part that I like about that is that the kids can start it at age 0. I have a wonderful video of kids in Spain 3-year-olds who had a problem that they couldn't reach the garbage bins on the poles because they were too short. And they said, we want to fix that problem. And they were led through a process, and they redesigned bins lower on the poles and everything. And they prototyped them, and they met with the mayor of the town, and she approved this thing, and they got these things built, and they got them put on the poles. And so this video ends with these 3-year-olds jumping up and down for joy around their new bins. Well, if you learn when you're 3 that you can affect the world and solve a problem that you see in your world, a real problem in the real world, and then you do it scores of times after that growing up, that's your way of doing it. You grow up and you keep doing these projects that have impact on something that you choose to have impact on, not something that somebody picks for you, but what you choose to have impact on. And then you have the impact. That's what I call empowerment. I choose, I accomplish, I see positive results. And that is just a very different way of growing up. And I hope that it will eventually take over from what we have now, which is just years and years and years of learning in advance.
Yeah, and it occurred to me that maybe there's another B that you can add to grab. It's not as severe, but I feel like there's a little bit of bitterness that gets in the way, right? Because there are people who I think who grew up kind of struggling to enjoy themselves throughout their lives. They had to do things they didn't want to do for most. They didn't feel heard or valued, and so they have a hard time seeing younger people following what they perceive to be an easier path. And I wonder if that's something also that gets in the way a little bit.
It does. It's probably right. But one of my favorite sayings from this was a T-shirt when I used to go to the Game Developers Conference. It's never too late to have a happy childhood. And yeah, isn't that a great idea? And so you could be bitter or you could do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
And this is, if the young people grow up, and I hope it happens, that they grow up thinking, wait, I can do what I dream of or what I want to do. And it may be hard and it may take a little more struggle, but I don't have to be controlled and I don't have to be kept in this whatever the prison is. It could be the schools, the parents, the culture, all of those things try to control kids. And that's what it does. And if you're not the kind of personality who breaks out of that or who finds a home there, a lot of people are comfortable with this and they find the right home and they're good. But a lot of people aren't. And more young people aren't. And they're not growing up in the stable families that help them, used to help them in the past. And they're not the paths. What are kids being told today? Your jobs are going away. The world is going to, become inundated with water. The world, it's and what do? They're stressed out in school. All kids are stressed out in school. They're stressed out at home. They're stressed out with all their extracurricular activity or whatever they have to do. And so kids are stressed. But it's wrong to blame the phones. It's wrong to say, well, it's just the technology and the fact that there are some abusive apps and stuff on the phones, which there are. And why don't we just do better than that and say, well, we have these incredible capabilities that were just not anywhere near available to our dreams in the past. And now let's do something with it. Look at what happens with school and jobs, right? You go to school for 12, 20, in some cases 20 years, I probably did. And when you come out of school and you get into a job, and you'd think, okay, I've been in school for 20 years. I can start doing important things and I can run projects and I can do it. No. Where do you start? At the very bottom. Nobody trusts you to do anything because you haven't had any experience in doing real world stuff during those 20 years of school. We treated you like a child. We treated you like a person who had to learn in advance before you could do anything. And so what a waste. We're wasting half our people like we wasted for a long time half our women. We just didn't let them go out into the workplace and contribute anything. We said, oh, you better stay home. You better do this. And most of us or many of us have realized that was a real loss and a real waste. And now we're doing the same things with our young people.
I guess too, when I think about, you mentioned like the lack of emotional or evolution, I guess, over time. So one of the good things that I guess hasn't changed is that we do, like you mentioned, we do actually, almost all of us seem to really benefit from helping other people. And that's like such an easy way to make yourself feel better.
Yeah.
We seem to live in a world where technology has kind of like wedged people against each other and kind of moved us into bubbles. But now we're on the verge of maybe a moment where technology could be used to kind of undo some of that damage and hopefully bring people a little closer together, find opportunities to connect over things that we have in common, and find ways to kind of work together to solve problems.
Wouldn't that be nice if we use the technology to get more Lego, more love, empathy, gratitude, and optimism into what we do and into how we interact and stuff like that? And I'm sure there are plenty of ways to do that. And they're just probably not the most profitable ways. It's much more profitable to feed people pornography and gambling. And because that speaks to the baser, if you want to call them that, the baser parts of our human nature. And we have it. That's the point. We have greed. We're all going to go for it. We all gamble. We like it. But is that who we want to be? And if we don't sort of change our goals and say, no, it's a whole lot nicer to be human and to be loving, and all these things really do make you feel good, and to be empathetic and to help other people and all this. And everybody knows that as soon as you do that, you feel better. Almost everybody does. And yet they revert to the grab. And so that's a problem. And that's what human nature has come to be over evolution. And there are good reasons for it, probably, and survival and all this other kind of stuff. But many of those reasons don't exist anymore, other than people having more than other people, and then they wind up abusing and exploiting and all those other things. So it's a good opportunity as we move into this new era where we have so many new capabilities. It's a great opportunity to rethink who we want to be and who we are, and to try to leverage these tools and these capabilities to be better. And I hope we do that.
Me too. Let's set up a date. We'll check back in 100 years.
You got
see where we are, or maybe even sooner.
I'll be watching. The great. I've always wanted to be a third millennium guy, a 21st century guy, and I am. And my great regret is I'm gonna die before I see a lot of the things that I know will happen and that I hope will be good things.
Yeah. It's good to feel hopeful in times like these. So yeah. Well, thanks, Marc. Appreciate you taking the time.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Well, thanks for hanging out with us again here on Invisible Machines. Don't forget to like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Always remember that you can watch this podcast too on our Invisible Machines YouTube channel. Head over to uxmag.com. We have a podcast page there where you can explore our back catalog and you can look at episodes centered around popular topics. Many, many thanks to our incredible production team here in the U.S. and in Ukraine: Elias Parker, Michael Litvinov, Allison Harshberger, Alla Slesarenko, Vera Pokodkov, and Darina Moskovchuk. Till next week, Owagi.